The sound wasn't loud, just a small click, but I knew exactly what it meant. I was already halfway to the door when I tried the handle. It didn't move. Not even a little. I turned it again slower this time, like maybe I had imagined it. I hadn't. "Ryan," I said. No answer. Then his voice came from the other side calm, like we were talking about dinner plans. "Mom, it's just for tonight." That was the moment something shifted. Not fear. I've lived long enough to know the difference. This wasn't panic, it was recognition. Because people don't lock their mother in her own bedroom by accident. "What are you doing?" I asked. "You almost fell last week," he said. "You shouldn't be walking around at night." I stood there with my hand still on the knob. For a second, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. Concern, safety, that's how it always starts. Then I heard something else. A drawer opening, then another. Slow at first. Careful, like he didn't want to wake me. Then a little faster when he realized I was already awake. That's when I stepped back from the door. Because whatever he was doing out there, it wasn't about me. It was about what he thought I had. I sat down on the edge of the bed and listened. Footsteps across the living room. The old floor still creaks in the same places it always has. If you've lived somewhere long enough, you can tell exactly where someone is without seeing them. He went to the file cabinet first. Of course he did. Metal sliding. Papers shifting. A pause. Then a louder movement, impatience creeping in. "Nothing's ever where it should be in this house," he muttered. That was new. Ryan doesn't usually talk to himself. Not like that. I leaned back against the wall and closed my eyes for a second. Not to rest, just to think. Because this didn't start tonight. It never does. It started about a year ago. Maybe a little longer. Back when he began showing up more often. Fixing things that weren't broken. Asking questions that didn't need answers. "How much land is it again? Do you still have the original paperwork? Have you thought about downsizing?" At the time, I let it go. That's what mothers do. We let things slide because we remember who they used to be. Ryan used to run through that backyard like it belonged to him. Used to say he'd never leave this place. Used to follow his father around with a hammer he didn't know how to use. Back then, this land was home. Now it was something else. I heard a cabinet door slam downstairs, louder this time. He wasn't being careful anymore. I stood up and walked to the window. The porch light was still on. I must have forgotten to turn it off. The yard looked the same as it always did. Quiet, still, like nothing had changed. But inside the house, everything had. Another drawer, then the sound of something being dragged across the floor. He was looking for something specific now. Not guessing, not checking, searching. I rested my hand against the glass and shook my head just a little. Because the thing he thought he was about to find hadn't been in this house for a very long time. And the worst part wasn't that he didn't know that. The worst part was how sure he was that he did. I stayed by the window a little longer, watching my own reflection instead of the yard. It's strange how you don't notice change when it happens slowly. You notice it later when something finally doesn't make sense anymore. Ryan didn't always sound like this. A year ago, he showed up with a toolbox and a smile that looked almost the same as it used to. Said he wanted to fix the fence line, replace a few boards on the porch. I didn't question it. I was glad to see him. We didn't get many visits before that. He walked the property like he still knew it, but not quite. Like someone remembering a place instead of living in it. He asked questions as we went. "How much of this is still in your name?" I told him all of it was. He nodded, like that confirmed something. At the time, it didn't feel wrong. Just practical. People ask about things when they get older. About paperwork. About planning ahead. A few weeks later, he came back. This time without the toolbox. We sat at the kitchen table, and he started talking about the market. How land prices were going up. How people were buying acreage just like this for development. He had numbers ready. Sales in nearby counties. Price per acre. I remember thinking he sounded prepared. Too prepared. "You ever think about selling a piece of it?" he asked. "No," I said. He didn't push, just nodded again. changed the subject, asked about dinner. That's how it worked in the beginning. He didn't argue, he just planted ideas, left them there. Over the next few months, the visits got more frequent. Not long visits, not warm ones either. Just enough time to bring something up, then leave before it turned into a conversation. Managing this place alone isn't easy. You shouldn't have to worry about all this at your age. Assisted living might actually be safer. That last one stuck. Not because it was offensive, because it was early. I hadn't said anything about struggling. I hadn't asked for help, but he was already offering solutions to problems I didn't have. That's when I started paying attention. Small things first. Mail that didn't land where I left it. A property tax envelope opened and stacked back like it hadn't been touched. A county notice that Ryan somehow knew about before I did. I didn't accuse him, I just watched. One afternoon, he showed up with a folder. Set it down on the table like it belonged there. "What's that?" I asked. "Nothing official," he said. "Just something I put together so you can see your options." I opened it. It was a draft listing agreement, not complete, not signed, but detailed enough to tell me exactly what he had in mind. He leaned back in the chair like he was waiting for me to be impressed. "Just informational," he added. I read every page. Then I closed it and slid it back to him. "I'm not selling," I said. He smiled. Not annoyed, not surprised. "Of course," he said. "Just thought you should know what it could look like." That was the moment I stopped hearing what he was saying and started noticing what he wasn't. He never asked what I wanted. Not once. Everything he brought up already had a direction, already had an outcome. I watched him gather the papers, tuck them back into the folder, like it was nothing. Like it hadn't just told me exactly how far ahead he was thinking. After that, I started doing something I should have done earlier. I stopped answering right away. I let silence sit between us. And people will tell you a lot when they think you're not pushing back. A week before tonight, he stood out by the porch steps and watched me come down a little slower than usual. "You almost fell last time," he said. "I didn't fall," I replied. "You could have." There it was again. Same tone, same calm certainty. "You shouldn't be alone at night," he added. I looked at him for a second longer than usual. Not angry, not confused, just aware. Because by then I understood something he didn't realize I understood. He wasn't worried about what might happen to me. He was getting ready for what he was about to do. I kept my eyes on the glass a second longer, then stepped away from the window. The house sounded different when you knew what to listen for. Ryan moved from the file cabinet to the kitchen. I heard the drawer with the old utility bills slide open, then the cabinet above the sink. He was working his way through the obvious places first. He always did things in order. That used to be something I admired. Now it just made him predictable. I sat back down on the bed, hands resting on my knees, and let the noise settle into something I could follow. Not just where he was, but how he was thinking. Because this wasn't random. It never had been. 3 months ago, I started noticing he wasn't asking questions anymore. He was confirming things. "You still keep the original deed in the house, right?" "Not do you?" "Not where is it?" Just, "You still keep it here." I didn't answer that one. He didn't repeat it either. That's how I knew it mattered. Around the same time, a letter from the county came in. Property tax assessment, nothing unusual. Except it had already been opened. Neatly, carefully, like someone had taken their time and made sure I wouldn't notice. I noticed. I just didn't say anything. A week later, Ryan mentioned the exact assessed value down to the dollar. I hadn't told him. That was the first time I felt that small shift from concern into something else. Not greed. Not exactly. Control. He started dropping details into conversations the same way he used to drop tools into his dad's work belt. Like they belonged there. Land like this doesn't stay untouched forever. Developers are already looking out this way. People our age don't hold on to property this size anymore. That last one made me smile. "Our age," I said. He didn't catch it. Or maybe he did and chose not to. Another time, he asked if I had ever considered putting someone else in charge of managing things. Just in case, he said, Just in case of what I asked, in case you needed help making decisions. That word sat there for a second. Help. I nodded like I understood, but what I heard was something different. Permission. I started keeping things where I wanted them, not where they had always been. The older files, tax records, survey maps, copies of past deeds, I moved them out of the cabinet he always checked first. Not hidden. Just not obvious. I wasn't trying to trap him. I just wanted to see how far he would go. A few days after that, he came by while I was out back. Said he had let himself in. He mentioned the cabinet being a mess. It wasn't, but he needed a reason to explain why he had been digging through it. That's when I stopped giving him explanations. I didn't confront him. I didn't accuse him. I just let him keep talking. And when people think you're not resisting, they relax. They move faster. They show you more than they meant to. Tonight wasn't the beginning of anything. It was the first time he stopped pretending it wasn't happening. I heard something heavy scrape across the floor downstairs. Not a drawer this time. Furniture. He had moved past the easy places. That meant one thing. He thought he was close. I stood up slowly, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to feel steady. Then I looked at the door again. Still locked. Still quiet on the other side. And for the first time since he turned that key, I said something out loud. Not to him, to myself. He thinks he knows where everything is. I paused, listening to another drawer open. Then I shook my head. Because what he didn't understand was that I had already decided exactly what he would find. I walked back to the door and rested my hand against it, not to open it, just to feel it. Solid. Familiar. Built by my husband years ago, so it would never stick, never jam, never trap. He used to say, a good door keeps things out. It doesn't keep people in. Ryan must have forgotten that. Or maybe he never really understood it in the first place. Downstairs, another drawer slammed. Louder now. No more pretending to be careful. Whatever patience he had brought into the house earlier that evening was gone. I could almost picture him standing in the middle of the living room trying to think 2 steps ahead, then 3, then 5. That's how he works. Always chasing the next move before finishing the one he's on. But tonight he wasn't thinking clearly. Desperation doesn't leave much room for strategy. I stepped away from the door and sat down again, slower this time. Not because I was tired, because I didn't need to move quickly. He did. That was the difference between us. A few hours earlier, before any of this started, he had been standing in the kitchen with that same calm voice. "Mom, you left the porch light on again," he said. "I like knowing where I am when I look outside," I replied. He gave a small smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "You've been forgetting little things," he said. I didn't answer. He waited a second, like he expected me to defend myself. When I didn't, he stepped a little closer. "I'm just saying, it might be time to think about getting some help." There it was again. Help! Always dressed up the same way. I walked past him to the sink, rinsed out my cup, took my time. Silence makes people uncomfortable when they're trying to steer a conversation. Help with what I asked finally. With decisions, he said. With the property. With everything. Everything. That word did more work than he realized. I turned the water off and dried my hands slowly. "I've been making decisions here longer than you've been alive," I said. He laughed, but it came out tight. "I know, Mom. I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying you don't have to do it alone. That's the part people believe. That's the part that sounds reasonable. And that's exactly why it works." A little later, he asked where I had put my phone. "Upstairs," I said. "I'll grab it for you," he offered. "I can get it." He was already halfway to the stairs. "Sit," he said lightly. "I've got it." I didn't argue, because by then I had already started making a choice, not to stop him, but to let him show me how far he was willing to go. He came back down a minute later with my phone in one hand and my car keys in the other. "You don't need these tonight," he said. That was new. I looked at him. Really looked this time. Not at my son. At the man standing in my kitchen, holding things that didn't belong to him. "Give me my keys," I said. "Mom." He sighed like I was the difficult one. "It's late. You're not going anywhere." I didn't say I was. Exactly, he replied. So it shouldn't matter. That's how it happens. Not all at once. Just small decisions one after another until something important changes hands and suddenly feels like it was never yours to begin with. I held his gaze a second longer, then let my hand drop. Fine, I said. He relaxed immediately. That was the moment he thought he had control. A few minutes later, I went upstairs. Not because I had to, because I wanted to see what he would do next. I sat on the bed, listened to him moving around, below waited. And when I heard his footsteps on the stairs, I knew. The door closed. Then the click. Clean. Final. Not hesitation, not doubt. A decision. And that's the part people get wrong. They think the line gets crossed when something dramatic happens. It doesn't. It gets crossed in quiet moments, when someone decides they're allowed to take something from you and doesn't expect you to take it back. I opened my eyes before I heard him. Morning light had already pushed its way through the curtains, soft and steady, like nothing unusual had happened overnight. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then I remembered the door. The lock. The quiet decision he made without asking me. Footsteps in the hallway broke the silence. Slower this time. Measured. Like he had already planned what came next. The lock turned. He didn't rush it. Just a simple twist, like it had never meant anything. The door opened halfway. "Morning, Mom," he said. Same voice, same tone, like we were starting a regular day. I sat up, letting my feet rest on the floor, taking a second before I stood. Not because I needed it. Because I wanted him to wait. "I made coffee," he added. "We should talk." "Of course we should." I walked past him into the hallway. He stepped aside, giving me space like he was being polite. Like last night had been a small misunderstanding instead of a decision. The kitchen looked different. Not messy. Organized. Too organized. Papers were laid out across the table in clean stacks. A pen placed right in the center, lined up with the edge like it belonged in a meeting, not a home. My coffee mug had been moved to the side to make room. Ryan was already standing by the table, one hand resting on the papers, the other tapping lightly, like he had rehearsed this. "Sit," he said. I didn't. "What is this?" I asked. "Nothing serious," he replied quickly. "Just something we should get started on." He slid the top page toward me. "Appraisal authorization." I didn't touch it. "This doesn't commit you to anything," he continued. "It just lets someone come out, take a look. Give us a number." "Us," I said. He smiled again. Tight, controlled. "Mom, we've talked about this. It's too much for you to manage alone. I've been managing it just fine." "That's not the point. It never was." He flipped to the next page. Listing agreement draft, cleaner than the one he showed me before. More complete. Names filled in, numbers added. "Prepared?" "You've already talked to someone," I said. He stopped moving. Just for a second. Then he leaned back slightly like he needed space to adjust. "I've had conversations," he said. "Nothing binding." "That's not what I asked." Silence. He looked at me like he was deciding whether to keep pretending or not. Then he chose. "There's interest," he said, "serious interest. This could solve a lot of things." There it was, not helping me, not making things easier, solving something. For who, I asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for the pen and slid it closer to me. "You don't need to worry about all the details," he said. "That's what I'm here for." I looked at the pen, then at him. "You filled all of this out yourself," I said. "It's just paperwork. It's not standard paperwork. It's a starting point. It's a decision," I said. He exhaled sharply, a little patience slipping through. "Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Harder. That word always shows up right before someone tries to take something from you." I rested my hand lightly on the edge of the table. "You set this up before you spoke to me," I said. He shook his head. "I was being proactive. You were being certain." Another pause, longer this time, because he knew I wasn't misunderstanding him. I wasn't behind. I wasn't confused. And for the first time that morning, something shifted in his expression. Not anger. Not yet. Something closer to uncertainty. "You're overthinking this," he said. I held his gaze. "No," I replied quietly. "I'm just catching up." I reached for the folder I had brought down with me and set it on the table right on top of his papers. He didn't recognize it. That told me everything. "What's that?" he asked. "Something you should have looked up before you started planning all of this," I said. He let out a small breath through his nose, like he was already tired of the conversation. "Mom, we don't need to make this complicated." "It already is," I replied, opening the folder. I didn't rush. No dramatic gestures, no raised voice, just paper on wood, one page at a time. The first document wasn't flashy, no bold letters, no warnings, just a clean legal format with a county stamp at the top. Ryan leaned forward slightly, trying to read it, before I turned it fully toward him. "What am I looking at?" he said. "You tell me." He scanned the page. Once, then again, slower the second time. His eyes stopped near the middle where the ownership line sat. "Margaret Ellis." He read, then paused. "As grantor." He looked up. "That's you." "Yes." He looked back down, following the text more carefully now. "Transfer of title into irrevocable trust." The room got quieter, not physically, but in the way people stop filling silence when they realize they don't understand what's happening. "This doesn't change anything," he said quickly. "It's still your property." "No," I said. "It isn't." He frowned. "That's not how that works." "That's exactly how it works." I slid the page a little closer to him. "The land isn't in my name anymore," I said. "Not in the way you think it is." He shook his head, already rejecting it before finishing the sentence. "Mom, you can't just sign something and lose ownership. That's not legal." "I didn't lose it," I replied. "I protected it." That word landed differently, not defensive, not emotional, just factual. He leaned back, then forward again, trying to find something he missed. "There has to be a way around this," he muttered. "There isn't." "That's not possible. It was 6 years ago." That made him stop. 6 years. Before any of this. Before the conversations. Before the papers he brought into my kitchen. "You didn't tell me," he said. "You didn't ask." Another pause. Longer this time. Because now he was doing the math, trying to fit this into the version of the situation he had built in his head. "This doesn't mean you can't sell," he said, holding on to the last piece of control he thought he had. "It just means there's an extra step. It means I don't get to decide that alone anymore," I said. "And you never did." His eyes snapped up to mine. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means there's a trustee," I said. "Independent. Not you. Not me." He stared at me like I had just changed the rules of a game he thought he understood. "That's ridiculous," he said. "Why would you do that?" I closed the folder halfway. "Because I was told to plan for pressure," I said, from who I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. The question hung there between us for a second, then settled exactly where it belonged. His jaw tightened. "You think I'm pressuring you," he said. "I think you locked me in my room last night," I replied. Silence. Clean, sharp, undeniable. He looked away first, just for a moment, but it was enough. Because that's the thing about truth. It doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be clear. I let the silence sit there for a second longer than he was comfortable with. Then I opened the folder again and turned to the next page. "This is the part you didn't think about," I said. He didn't move closer this time. He stayed where he was, like distance might help him make sense of it. "What now?" he asked. "Read?" He didn't reach for the paper, so I did it for him. I slid it across the table and tapped the section near the bottom. Right there. He leaned in just enough to see. His eyes moved faster now. Not careful, not steady, skipping ahead, then coming back. "In the event of coercion," he read under his breath. That word slowed him down. He read the next line twice, then a third time. "That doesn't apply," he said quickly. "That's for outside parties. Not family. It applies to anyone," I said. "That's not enforceable. It is when it's documented." He shook his head, already dismissing it. "You're overreacting." "Nothing happened. I didn't argue. I just said it again. You locked me in my room. That was for your safety. You took my phone. So you wouldn't go wandering around at night. You took my keys. You weren't going anywhere." Every answer came faster than the last. Every one of them sounded more like justification than explanation. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. All of that, I said calmly, is exactly what that clause is written for. He stared at me, trying to find a gap in what I was saying. There's no proof, he said. There doesn't need to be much. Before I could say anything else, there was a knock at the front door. Sharp, direct, not hesitant. Ryan straightened immediately, like the sound had pulled him back into control. "Stay here," he said, already moving toward the door. I didn't move. I didn't need permission to stand up in my own house. I followed him anyway. He opened the door just enough to look outside. "What are you doing here?" he said low. A familiar voice answered before I could see her. "I've been calling since last night." Chloe stepped forward and pushed the door open wider without waiting for him to move. She walked in like she belonged there, because she did. Her eyes went straight to me. "Grandma," she said, crossing the room in a few quick steps. "Are you okay?" "I am now," I said. She stopped just short of me and looked me over, not in a worried way, more like she was checking details. Then her attention shifted. To Ryan, to the table, to the papers, to the way he was standing between her and the kitchen. "What's going on?" she asked. "Nothing," Ryan said quickly. "We're just talking." She didn't respond to him. Instead, she looked back at me. "Why didn't you answer your phone?" "He took it," I said. Her expression changed immediately. Not confused, not surprised, focused. "What do you mean he took it?" she asked. Ryan stepped in before I could answer. "I was helping her," he said. "She's been getting disoriented at night." Chloe didn't even look at him. "Did you lock her in?" she asked. The room went quiet again. Ryan let out a short breath. "It wasn't like that. That's not what I asked." He hesitated. "Just long enough." "Yes," I said. Chloe's jaw tightened. She nodded once like something had just been confirmed. Then she finally turned to Ryan. "This isn't protection," she said. "This is control." He scoffed, trying to brush it off. "You don't understand the situation." "I understand it exactly," she replied. "I see this every week." That landed harder than anything I had said. Not louder, just heavier. Ryan looked between the two of us, searching for something to push back on. There wasn't much left. "You're making this into something it's not," he said. "No," I replied. "It already is." I watched him stand there for a second longer, like he was still trying to figure out if there was a way to turn it back. There wasn't. He looked at the papers again, then at Chloe, then at me. For the first time since last night, he didn't have anything ready to say. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he said finally. "That's the thing about lines. Most people don't mean to cross them. They just keep moving them until one day they're standing on the other side and don't recognize how they got there." "You didn't ask for help," I said. "You decided you needed control." He didn't argue with that, not because he agreed, because he couldn't. He picked up his jacket from the chair and held it for a second like he wasn't sure what came next. Then he walked to the door and opened it without looking back. No slammed door. No last word. Just quiet. Chloe stayed where she was, arms crossed, watching him leave. When the door closed, she let out a slow breath and turned to me. "You did the right thing," she said. "I did what I should have done sooner," I replied. That was the only part that stayed with me. Not the lock, not the papers, not even the look on his face when he realized he didn't have control. It was how long I had waited to draw the line. Later that afternoon, I stepped outside. The land looked the same as it always had. Same trees, same fence line, same stretch of quiet that people either understand or don't. Chloe walked out behind me and stood beside me without saying anything. "You ever think about leaving?" she asked after a while. "No," I said. "I think about protecting it." She nodded, and that was enough, because that's what this was always about. Not land, not money, not even him. It was about knowing the difference between help and control, and not waiting until it's too late to say something about it. If there's anything worth taking from this life story, it's simple. Pay attention when someone starts making decisions for you without asking. Don't ignore the small signs, because they're easier to explain away. And don't confuse silence with safety, because most of the time it isn't. If you're into family revenge stories that don't rely on shouting, but on clarity, or real family drama that feels like it could happen in your own life, then this is exactly what this channel is about. Stories like this aren't always loud, but they stay with you longer. So if you want more family revenge stories, more grounded revenge stories, and real-life family drama told the way it actually happens, go ahead and subscribe. And next time something doesn't feel right, don't wait as long as I did to trust it.